The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the impeccably groomed lawns and pristine sidewalks of Maple Grove Estates. It was the kind of neighborhood where every shrub was sculpted to perfection, every driveway gleamed without a speck of dirt, and unwritten codes dictated everything from the shade of your mailbox to the precise angle of your parked vehicle. I guided my SUV into the driveway of my aunt's house, the engine's low hum, the only sound piercing the uncanny stillness. I had visited before, but something about today felt off. Perhaps it was the subtle twitch of curtains in nearby windows as I stepped out, or the oppressive silence that seemed to cloak the air, as if the entire community was collectively holding its breath. I had barely closed the car door when I heard it. The sharp, deliberate click of heels striking pavement, approaching with intent. A voice, shrill and commanding, sliced through the quiet like a knife. "Excuse me, can I assist you?" I turned, already anticipating the encounter. There she stood, arms crossed, lips pursed, the self-proclaimed guardian of Maple Grove Estates. Short, wiry, and exuding an aura that screamed authority, Cynthia, the HOA enforcer, eyed me as if I were an intruder at an elite event. I offered a courteous smile. "No, thank you, I'm fine." Her expression remained unchanged, her gaze flicking to my SUV and back to me. "Do you live here?" she asked, her tone simple yet dripping with suspicion. I could sense the tension coiling around us, the predictable script unfolding. "I'm visiting my aunt," I replied calmly. She raised an eyebrow. "Name?" I exhaled steadily, maintaining my composure. "Eleanor Harper, house number 318. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she reached into her pocket, retrieving a sleek black phone. "I don't recognize you," she said, her fingers tapping the screen with alarming speed. "And we have strict rules about unregistered visitors." I watched as she prepared to escalate, my instincts warning me this wouldn't end with a casual exchange. I was proven right when she declared, "I'm calling security." A flicker of irritation stirred within me, but I kept my expression neutral. Years of handling overzealous authority figures had taught me one lesson: never let them see you falter. Cynthia, however, thrived on dominance, and at that moment, she believed she held all the power. Her fingers hovered over her phone, her eyes narrowing as if sizing me up. "This is private property," she snapped. "We don't permit random strangers to loiter. You need to prove you belong, right now." I sighed, adjusting my jacket as I glanced toward my aunt's house. Not even 5 minutes here, and I was already entangled in this. "I've told you," I said evenly. "I'm visiting my Aunt Eleanor Harper, house 318. Cynthia's lips curled into a smirk, almost amused. "Funny, I know everyone in this community," she said, tilting her head as if I were a misplaced puzzle piece. "And I've never seen you before." Murmurs arose behind her. I noticed a small crowd forming. A man in khakis standing rigidly by his roses, a woman with a yapping dog, a guy feigning interest in his mailbox, an elderly couple whispering on their porch. Their stares bore into me, assessing, judging. In a place like this, strangers weren't merely unfamiliar, they were threats. Cynthia stepped closer, her voice dropping. "We've had incidents before," she said, her eyes darting to my car. "People coming in, causing trouble, pretending they belong." My jaw tightened. There it was, the subtle, unspoken accusation beneath her sanctimonious tone. It wasn't about rules, it was about me. I took a slow breath. "I'm not pretending. My aunt knows I'm here. If you need proof, she's inside. I can call her." Cynthia let out a dry laugh, shaking her head. "That's not how this works." The murmurs grew louder. Someone muttered, "She doesn't look like she lives here." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay composed. This was spiraling. Cynthia's eyes gleamed, sensing her upper hand. "Look, I don't want to escalate this, but if you refuse to comply, I'll have no choice but to call security." With deliberate slowness, she pressed the call button. My stomach knotted as she raised the phone to her ear. The crowd leaned in, awaiting the climax. I wasn't just being questioned, I was being cornered, and Cynthia had no intention of letting me slip away easily. A hush fell as the distant rumble of an engine broke the stillness. My gaze shifted to the neighborhood entrance, where a white security SUV rounded the corner, its amber lights flashing with silent authority. Cynthia's smirk widened as she stepped back, subtly positioning herself as the aggrieved party. I exhaled slowly, steadying my pulse. Stay calm, stay in control. The vehicle stopped, and a broad-shouldered man in a Navy uniform stepped out. His name tag read J. Carter, and his rigid demeanor suggested he was here to enforce order, not mediate. Cynthia pounced. "Thank goodness you're here," she exclaimed, approaching him with theatrical relief. "I caught this individual loitering, claiming she's visiting someone, but she refuses to provide proof." Carter's sharp gaze landed on me, and I saw the judgment flicker in his eyes. Guilty until proven otherwise. "Ma'am," he said, his voice firm, "I'll need to see some identification." I held my ground. "I've already told her I'm visiting my Aunt Eleanor Harper, house 318. I can call her now if you need confirmation." Cynthia sighed dramatically. "She says that, but anyone can claim they know someone here. We have strict HOA policies for a reason." Carter barely glanced at her, focusing on me. "I understand, but this is private property. We have a duty to verify all visitors. Please provide an ID." Silence thickened around us. I could feel the crowd's scrutiny tightening like a noose. Cynthia's smugness deepened. She thought she had me trapped, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. I let the moment linger, just enough to unsettle her, then reached into my pocket, not for my ID, but for something far more potent. "Are you sure you want to pursue this?" I asked, my voice cool but edged with steel. Carter blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me." I tilted my head, studying him. "You're assuming I don't belong, that I'm trespassing. You're deciding without all the facts." Cynthia scoffed. "Oh, please. If you had proof, you'd have shown it by now." I smiled, a slow, deliberate smile. "All right," I said softly. Then I withdrew my badge. The reaction was immediate. Carter stiffened, his eyes widening as the emblem caught the light. Cynthia's smugness fractured, confusion and panic flashing across her face. I let the silence stretch, letting the power shift settle. "I'd be happy to provide identification," I said smoothly, flipping open my badge case. "Special Agent Emily Carter, Department of Justice." Carter's mouth parted slightly, his brain scrambling to catch up. You're federal?" I nodded once. "Is that an issue?" He shook his head quickly. "No, ma'am, not at all." Cynthia, however, wasn't ready to surrender. That doesn't mean anything," she stammered, her voice thinning. "Anyone can flash a fake badge." I raised an eyebrow, then reached into my back pocket, producing my official ID, laminated, with my name, title, and a holographic seal. Her confidence crumbled further. I turned to Carter. "Would you like to verify this with your superiors?" My tone was controlled, but the authority was unmistakable. He shook his head. "That won't be necessary." Cynthia forced a laugh, but it fell flat. The crowd's allegiance was shifting. Neighbors who had watched me with suspicion now averted their eyes, some embarrassed, others stunned by her unraveling. I stepped closer to her, lowering my voice. "You thought you controlled this," I murmured, "but you never did. You assumed you'd get away with it because you always have." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Tell me, Cynthia, how many people have you done this to?" She faltered, her silence damning. I stepped back and addressed Carter. "I assume we're finished here?" He nodded stiffly. "Yes, ma'am. Apologies for the inconvenience." I tucked my badge away, brushing off my jacket. "Good." With deliberate calm, I turned and walked toward my aunt's house, leaving Cynthia exposed and powerless. As I reached the doorstep, a laugh, sharp and unrestrained, erupted from the crowd. The scales had tipped, and Cynthia knew it. She stood frozen, mouth gaping, searching for a way to reclaim her narrative. "Well," she snapped, her voice brittle, "this doesn't change the fact that we have strict HOA policies." I raised an eyebrow. "And which rule requires your personal approval for visitors?" She faltered. I turned to Carter. "You work with the HOA, correct? You must have the regulations." He shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, we do." I folded my arms. "Then check them. I'd like to see the rules Cynthia's enforcing." Silence descended. Cynthia's hands balled into fists. It's common sense," she sputtered. "We can't let just anyone in." I cut in calmly. "But I wasn't wandering. I was in a driveway. I told you who I was visiting. You chose not to believe me." Carter scrolled through his tablet, his frown deepening. After a pause, he exhaled. I don't see anything about pre-approving visitors. Cynthia's face reddened. You're not looking properly. He ignored her, glancing at me. You're right. We may have overstepped. A voice broke through the crowd. She always does this. A woman in a floral blouse stepped forward, arms crossed. This isn't the first time Cynthia's harassed someone. More voices joined. She called security on my son for skateboarding. She fined me for my curtains. The crowd turned, their whispers now accusations. Cynthia's horror deepened. That's not true. I was doing my job. I tilted my head. Your job? Last I checked, the HOA isn't a dictatorship. Carter, eager to escape, sighed. Ma'am, we'll need to review this with the HOA board. Cynthia stiffened. Wait, what? You're overstepping, he said firmly. And this isn't the first complaint. There'll be a review. Her breathing quickened as her power slipped away. I met her gaze one last time. This ends today, Cynthia. She opened her mouth, but no words came. She had lost. The silence that followed was heavy. Cynthia stood alone, fury and humiliation warring on her face, but no one rallied to her side. A man in a golf shirt shook his head. I can't believe I listened to her. The woman in the blouse turned to me. I'm so sorry. We should have stepped in sooner. Cynthia let out a bitter laugh. You're all acting like I'm the villain when I was upholding standards. No one replied. With a huff, she stormed off, heels clicking. I watched her go, the tension easing. Justice had prevailed, not just for me, but for everyone she'd bullied. 1 week later, Maple Grove Estates hosted its most attended HOA meeting ever. Word had spread quickly, drawing residents who rarely showed up. From my seat at the back, I saw why. Cynthia sat at the front, stiff and silent, not leading, but judged. The HOA president, a silver-haired man with quiet authority, spoke. After numerous complaints and a thorough review, it's clear Cynthia Reynolds has misrepresented HOA policies for years, issuing baseless citations and harassing residents. Murmurs filled the room. Effective immediately, she is removed from all authority. Cynthia shot to her feet. You can't do this. I've dedicated years to this community. The president didn't flinch. The decision is final. She stormed out, the door slamming behind her. A quiet satisfaction settled over me. I hadn't needed to attend. Off-screen, karma had delivered. As I left, neighbors nodded in quiet respect. I stepped into the cool evening air, a small smirk tugging at my lips. Justice tasted sweet.